This next little clip, it's kind of hard for me to watch, you can imagine, but this next clip, William was several months before he died. We flew out to Seattle, Washington for a friend for a funeral. And I was saying at the Bulgarian embassy, where we had a wonderful program for Gray on the 15th, that you have great regrets, you know, when you love somebody and they passed on. And one of them was that there he was with his pneumonia at Lawrence Memorial, and I kept insisting that he read a poem for the doctors who were coming. And to his last breath, he was doing that. But he won the Pulitzer and the National Book Award and the LA Times Book Award after the stroke. So it's really a unique chapter in American letters, I think. And so this clip is William reading a poem called Parents, which was dedicated to Wolf and Janet Gazzari's daughter. I'm blocking on her name.
Vanessa.
What's it?
Vanessa.
Vanessa, of course, yeah. So this next poem, Parents, is in the New Yorker and is written for those two children of Janet Gazzari, who's a professor here at Connecticut College.
Parents, what it must be like to be an angel or a squirrel, we can't imagine sooner. The last time they go to bed good, they are there, lying about darkness. They did us once too often, these friends who become our enemies. Suddenly when they're juniors, and those that we are to be, they get wrinkles when it's in their smooth, odd coughs, and smells. It is grotesque when they go on loving us, we go on loving them. The effrontery, barely imaginable, of having caused us, and how. Their lives, surely we could have better than that. This goes on for a long time. Everything they do is wrong. And the worst thing, they all do it, is to die, taking with them the last explanation, how we came out of the wet sea, or wherever we got us from, taking the last link of the chain with them. Mother, we cried, briefly to our uncomprehending children and grandchildren.
This last clip, a short clip, is William reading his poem just about the time he would have been teaching here at Connecticut College. And there's just a lovely shot of him, and you'll hear the poem about spring. It's a long epigraph from Uncle Tom's Cabin to open the poem. And that'll be it for the movies, and we can get to the main event.
It was now early spring, and the river was swollen and turbulent. Great cakes of floating ice were swinging heavily to and fro in the turbid waters. Owing to a peculiar form of the shore on the Kentucky side, the land bending far out into the water, the ice had been lodged and detained in great quantities, and the narrow channel which swept round the bend was full of ice, piled one cake over another, thus forming a temporary barrier to the descending ice, which lodged and formed a great undulating raft. Eliza stood for a moment, contemplating this unfavorable aspect of things. Crossing over. That's what love is like. The whole river is melting. We skim along in great peril, having to move faster than ice goes under, and still find foothold in the soft flow. We are one another's flow. Each displaces the weight of his own need. I am fat as a bloodhound. Hold me up. I won't hurt you. Though I bay, I would swim with you on my back until the cold seeped into my heart. We are committed. We are going across this river willy-nilly. No one, black or white, is free in Kentucky. Oh, gravity owns everybody. We're waiting. I contemplate this unfavorable aspect of things. Where is something solid? Only you and me. Has anyone ever been to Ohio? Do the people there stand firmly on icebergs? Here, all we have is love, a great undulating raft, melting steadily. We go out on it anyhow. I love you. I love this fool's walk. The thing we have to learn is how to walk light.
There's a wonderful anthology of criticism, poetry criticism called Walking Light, which I think is very Yesterday I got a letter from Congressman Courtney for Gray Jacobik, and it reads, "Congratulations on receiving the 2016 William Meredith Award. This is an honor reserved only for individuals who have proven their character through their behavior and contributions to society while striving to make it a better place to live. Our society historically relies on linguistic creativity to carry on the traditions of America's rich culture. Poetry is the art of literature, and your works demonstrate this. Poems such as Man Sleeping on the West Coast of Ireland and The Three Eyes enlighten many members of the Eastern Connecticut communities. Perhaps even more notably, you have consistently dedicated your time and resources to helping those around you. You have established yourself as an active member of Southeastern Connecticut and a leader in creating positive environments. Once more, I'd like to extend my congratulations to you on this well-earned recognition and offer my thanks for all the work you have done to improve your community." We have a number of great poets among us: Margaret Gibson, Rennie McQuilkin, Melanie Greenhouse, Christy McWilliams, Jean-Yves Salenga, Mary Posner. So it's really a lovely afternoon for poetry, and I would like to recognize you all. I have an inordinately long introduction, but I'm going to try to curb it a little bit. Gray Jacobik is a poet and painter who lives in Deep River, Connecticut. Her poems have appeared in numerous literary journals and anthologies and have garnered major awards and fellowship recognition. I'll not list them at all, but only point out to comments by fellow poets such as James Tate, who has described Miss Jacobik as a rare poet, one not to be missed. Former Connecticut Poet Laureate Dick Allen praises a lucid poetry filled with crafted, amazing work. And the newly elected Poet Laureate, Rennie McQuilkin, who's with us, has written, "It is rare to encounter truth-saying that is so wholly sensual and philosophical, sexual and intellectual at the same breathtaking moment, so witty but also sober in its assessments, so utterly simple and complex." Gray recently did, I'll cut some of it, but she recently did an interview with her alumni magazine, and the interviewer asks her how she found poetry, what got her started, and she replies, "I think something as huge as one's major life calling finds us. We don't find it, although of course we need to be open to it. I began writing poems when I had an epiphany at the age of 29. I lived in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, and one day I was walking around the reflecting pool in front of the Capitol. I saw pigeons flying above the water and their reflections in the water, and suddenly, deeply, I understand the nature of metaphor, how it serves to generate consciousness itself. It's difficult to explain in words the richness of this epiphany because it has an all-comprehensiveness about it, presented itself as a gestalt of a very complex phenomenon." I would really love to go on to read more of that interview, but I want to save the time for Gray. And we also have Rennie McQuilkin, the newly elected Poet Laureate of Connecticut, who also directs Antrim House, a fine publishing establishment that published many books. and who had a great hand, frankly, in helping us put this book together. We really owe him a debt of gratitude. I should point out that this beautiful painting is done by Jacobik. I mean, amazing. You know, it's a copy after Caravaggio, but it's extraordinary, and it forms the cover of the book. So I'd like Reddy to come up, please, and say a few words, perhaps read a poem, and at that point we'll ask Gray to take over and read the work.
Utterly wonderful to have William with us, not to mention Richard Artis, who has arranged this grand celebration for Gray, and we thank him for that. We thank him that the book exists and that we are all here with Gray together. And I'd like to also say that I see so many wonderful faces out there who are friends of poetry and friends of Gray, which is to say that's one and the same thing, friends of Gray and poetry. My goodness, Meredith was an inspiration to me, and I'm sure to many of you, in many ways. And one of those ways was his explanation to me, a hippie, non-rhyming, throwback to the days when rhyme was not thought to be avant-garde, as it is now, fortunately. He said about rhyme that, young man, if you consider rhyme and you are looking for words that rhyme, and perhaps even interested in stanzaic structure, but let's keep it rhyme, you are going to come up with words that have associations that show you that the poem is smarter than you are and might have a place to go. Those associations are going to pull you away from yourself and into possibilities for the poem that you perhaps didn't understand existed. And I have been ever since then more likely to rhyme. Thank you. A more handsome man than he, I can't imagine, in all ways of the word handsome. I'm going to say one poem of my own with great modesty in the face of Meredith's work, and that last poem of mine, Crossing the River, is an incredible thing. This is part of a series of poems on saints that I've been working on. This passion for saints came out of nowhere and persisted for several months, and I'm still sort of sporadically writing about them and thinking about them and meeting with them and so forth. So it was. I'm going to do a little book called A Quorum of Saints, one of which I am not. Thank God, because they're kind of frightening people. The least saintly of them is my best friend because he doesn't intimidate me. But this is called. This is entitled August 8. This is one of that series. August 8, Saint Theodora. And there was Theodora, sent from the comfort of her convent home in France to the frontier of the New World in 1840. Saint Mary in the Woods, Indiana, for God's sake, that forsaken outpost convent farm in a land whose language, droughts, crop failures, and infestations of locusts were beyond her and her sisters. Her words to them, have confidence, though the way is not clear. Grope along slowly. An ex-Marine friend of mine is no less dislocated and persistent, never on leave from loss inflicted over 40 years ago when he served as a registrar in Vietnam, counting and recording the dead to be body bagged for transit. Day after day, he hauls himself to work, encouraging all, not least of all, himself. O Lord, may each of us take a cue from Mary Oliver, who says, poems are not words after all, but ropes let down to the lost. Let us climb out of our wells toward the light above by inching from knot to knot on ropes we lower to ourselves no less than to others, counting on the knots like beads to save the day every blessed day. This blessed day happens to be Earth Day, which seems entirely appropriate for great Jacobik, than whom no earthier poet ever existed, nor one more philosophical. And I won't repeat what I wrote about her, but that's the essence of it. She combines these qualities in a way that I don't know anyone can do as well as Gray. And you know, and such a painter to boot. Such a glorious painter. She can't wait to get back to her painting, you know, actually. And we are seconding her because she does both things, poetry and painting, so gloriously. And you know, in a couple of years, she will have another book coming out on Eleanor Roosevelt, monologues by Eleanor Roosevelt, and we can't wait for that. But fortunately, we have at least 2 years probably to assimilate and enjoy and immerse ourselves in this current book, which is such a grand book. So I don't know really what to say more than that about Gray, except that she is the most generous person alive, to her friends, to poetry, to the poems, to every ounce of her daily life. She is generous to all of us, to herself, to poetry, to painting, and we wait to hear from her now much more eloquently than I can describe her to you. So I think Gray is going to come up here.
There will be a reception, and a few of us are going to roll down the hill to Mr. G's for a bite, a Dutch treat after the reception, so to let you know that there's some spaces. And I can't resist the last couple lines of my introduction. It is this virtually indescribable transcendental element in her poetry that I find so appealing. Gray is a lovely, wise, attractive, self-assured person you would immediately want to meet after reading the exquisite poems. The Foundation considers itself very lucky that she has accepted this award, which honors William's merit legacy so appropriately. So here's Gray Jacobik.
Oh, it's so lovely to see so many of you I've known forever. It's great. And some dear, poets work in groups, and for 15 years I was part of the group that centers around Susan Finnegan and James Finnegan. And they're both here, and Charlie Chase is a part of that group, and so many others, people who worked with me on these poems. And oh my God. Thank you. You honor me with your presence truly, deeply. And I'm very honored to have my name associated with William Meredith. He's a poet who's been important to me for 30 years. I love how plain spoken and yet deep his work is. That, to me, is the work that nurtures me most deeply. And he's certainly one of those poets in my pantheon. Wow. I'm deeply grateful to Rennie McQuilkin because he designed the interior of this book. And many of you have worked with him, so you know his painstaking contribution to any book. Many long phone calls and questions. Those commas that should be semicolons, and we would go back and forth. So you know that kind of argument. So I'm very grateful to you. And also, he kept saying, "You've got to read the whole thing all over again." And I'm saying, "Rennie, I can't all over again. He's saying, no, you just, take your time, one more time. Finally, about the 5th time, he told me I had to read the whole thing over again. I hired a copy editor because I couldn't bear to read it. But now I'm coming to like it again. So Randy, thank you so much. And Richard, thank you for all you've done for me for the extraordinary event. When I told people I'm reading at the Embassy of the Republic of Bulgaria, it was such a kick. There were so many people were there, and it was just real joy. Jean, thank you for coming. And I see several painters in the room too, so I've got both my worlds here. Yes, thank you. Okay. I'm going to read from parts all the way through the book. One poem from each of the 3 major collections that are selected here, and then from the sections of new poems. So this is from the Double Task. The last of our embraces transformed from the first. I see our skulls, our grave bones move when we step toward one another to kiss. The dry, hard whiteness coming close, even as our lips touch, and our jawbones drop for our mouths, our tongues. And I hear that low hiss from the other side, where no one we know knows the amazement of our love, or how costly it's been to keep and grow. I don't care that death stands inside of life, or that your head and chin without flesh are as real to me as your tongue, or that moist rim of tenderness I see in your eyes. I call this the great night that steps into and out of us constantly, trying us on like garments, counting the hours until we become its complete possession. The mystery is not that we die. We know this. We take it like fall coming on, or winter. The mystery is that love opens us again and again, brings us back to tenderness and holiness, back to marrow. There was a very famous poet a few years back who was married to another poet, and he nursed her through her final illness and then wrote a book about it. And I had a very unpleasant feeling reading that book. I felt like I was a voyeur and I was invading someone's privacy. And so that experience led me to write this poem called Privacy. I don't want what I say at the end to be made public, nor what my body may do, how it might spell itself out in last failings, final strengths. These facts the ether may keep, the light or its absence in that last room. And if there is a witness, memory's guardian, then as long as that other lasts. But this alone, no paper or keyboard receive the impression, no microphone, not to relieve grief nor compensate the psyche for its spirit's companion's banishment. Silence and a great opening are the honor I seek. Release from time the details and recordable facts. Unremarkable as this transition is, do not attempt to mark it, for when summer grasses come, they will etch their easy erasures. Autumn rains will add to the slow erosion that is the nature of true remembrance. Winds will give their scourings, snows their soft abrasions, writing graven on the shifting surface of the earth. I mention the Queen of Aragon in this poem, so I just have to give you a little footnote about that. Oh, these roses are so beautiful. Thank you, Sarah. It comes from Montaigne in his essays. He wrote the following about the Queen of Aragon. After mature deliberation of council, the good queen, to establish a rule and imitable example unto all posterity, for the moderation and required modesty of a lawful marriage, ordained the number of 6 times a day as a lawful, necessary, and competent limit. So those Spanish back there, I mean, it was the law of the land. This is called angel sex. And it begins with an epigraph from Emanuel Swedenborg. The sexual intercourse of the angels is a conflagration of the whole being. And what voyeur could look into that fire? And how do they wrap their wings around? Feathers overlapping feathers, and what white dance of down? Are they in flight from heaven's compound eye, disappearing through a sieve of light as adolescents do, who find a car or wood or pear behind the mall? A blaze like a cymbal clash when one angel penetrates another in flight? Or do they couple on the grass or in the branches of a tree? 2 ethereals a shimmer in the deliciousness of touch, 2 brilliant holograms of heaven. Does holy edict restrict them as the Queen of Aragon's rule limited her married subjects to a modest, lawful 6 times a day? Lawrence saw them transporting sperm across the phallus of a he-whale to the womb of a she-whale. So perhaps God's given them a role in all quotients, and they're with us in our graceful or awkward copulations, plying their luminous counterparts as we ply fingers and tongues, exploring with us sensation and response. We climax and for some seconds, minutes, drift in soft radiance. Then, as if summoned, they withdraw, and we fall back too quickly to await once more whatever dolings out of transport, whatever fiery rapture divinity allows. Night noises, visiting relations. Nearly an octogenarian, my aunt is in the next room with her new lover, a career service Marine, retired. They are at it indelicately. He hoots with excitement, short exasperations that remind me of the miniature train set my brother was Pop little white pills into the engine smokestack and eventually powdery smoke puff forms, adding to the illusion as the Lionel rolled past spongy trees and tiny plaster villages. I knew there were men who made this owlish sound. Perhaps some women do too. How absurd much of being human is. The ridiculous ballast to the tragic. Aunt's second husband died 2 years back. Cancer of the spine nibbling him through a grotesque decline. She his selfless, constant caregiver. Woo, woo, beloved.